Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures that Outperform. I'm Frank Wanderer. I'm the founder and CEO of People Productive. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Terry Mays, a certified culture engineer. I hope you've been following this series on innovative culture. Today, we're actually going to be talking about think time. Think time is an incredibly important topic. Actually, in the studies we did of cultures and companies, and which companies were the most competitive, which had the best cultures. What we found actually was that out of all the human factors studied, companies that were at that fourth tier innovative, you go back to episode one, we go through these culture maturity levels. Innovative culture is at level four. The companies that made it to level four, the largest human factor in terms of the degree of difference in their score versus the three levels below them was think time. It was actually 1.4, I believe, difference, because they were at like 4.2 on think time. Everybody else at the next level down through was at 2.8. So these innovative cultures, companies that were highly innovative, think time, we were able to prove scientifically is one of the big drivers. And companies have to be incredibly well run, managed, and led in order to create room for think time. And there is within every human being a deep well of thinking over which a heavy iron lid is kept clamped. This is Sherwood Anderson. Now, what he's really referring to is the fact that your subconscious is so powerful. If you actually embrace and are motivated and passionate about a topic, or if you're charged with coming up with ideas in a certain area and you're given time to collect a lot of information, your subconscious is going to process this. It runs at 10 billion bits per second. But it's not going to pop into consciousness till you have think time, time to sit back, relax, and think. You'll find that Albert Einstein came up with many of his best ideas on his long walks. He talked about that. You can go look at his papers. So this is real. And there are many examples where great breakthroughs came as a result of the think time people had at work. But it's very important. It's scientifically one of the key drivers of innovation. You got to go through and try all these human factors of innovations and put them in play in your workplace. But if you don't have think time, you're just not going to get to the breakthrough that you want. It just isn't going to happen. You've got to have think time. It's just that important, right, Tara?
That's right. You've got to have time where you're not distracted. You don't have a lot of things going on. You're not sitting in meetings. You're not, thinking about meetings or thinking about your to-do list and all the things that have got to get done. You need time where you can think, dedicated time where you can think about problems that you're trying to solve. Think about answers to questions, solutions that you want to provide. Think about new ways to innovate. You need dedicated time to think about that and not have anything else flood your mind, but you're focused solely on how can we improve? How can we make things better? When you have time to think about that, you come up with really good solutions, come up with great ideas when you have that dedicated time to sit back
Yep.
in a relaxed environment. So you've got to get rid of the stress. In a stress state, you will not be able to create anything new. And we've talked about this a lot, but it's one of the biggest ways to keep from being innovative is to keep people in a stressful state because they're not thinking clearly. They're not at their best. Most people don't function well in stressful environments. So make sure you're not a leader that's creating a lot of stress and chaos
Oh,
around
God,
people.
hopefully not, right?
Right. You want to create time for people and give them room to actually think about questions that have been posed. Let them
Yeah.
think about problems that exist in the organization and how we might solve them. But you need quiet consideration for that. You cannot have a lot of distraction and stress around you.
No, think time is absolutely critical to every leader and company's success. It is one of the key human factors of innovation. When you look at the way corporations are really structured today, especially when it comes to knowledge work, you have teams of highly specialized people who have to come up with solutions. They have to work together and they have to turn concepts into reality. And coming up with those concepts sometime is very much related to think time. If you look at the history of innovation, for instance, the semiconductor, which was, one of the great breakthroughs. Jack Kilby actually started at Texas Instruments. I think it was in the summer of 1956. And interestingly, he was tasked with coming up with this concept of how they could move things onto a smaller chip to do computations and processing. And Texas Instruments at that time closed for 1 or 2 weeks. And he started at the beginning of it. He wasn't entitled to vacation. He was there alone, and he had incredible amounts of think time, put his feet up on the desk, thought about it. And he is the one who came up with the breakthrough of the semiconductor, actually. And that's related to think time. I think it's just a great example of how powerful it is when people are given time to really think. He also had interruption free time and tons of it to do research and dig into things. So look at how powerful those two are in combination. There are just so many examples of where think time came into play. Barbara McClintock made a breakthrough on DNA, and actually she'd been working on it many times, studying like corn and how they pollinated each other. And she was sitting on a bench under a tree at the time the flash came. And so you could see so many examples where there were great breakthroughs, and it was a think time that allowed it to emerge and express itself. And so this is just super important. It is. And there is within every human being this deep well of thinking, which is this think time. The subconscious is boiling full of information. When you task it with something, it's working 24/7. You don't even know it's working away on the problem until boop, it pops into consciousness. I'm sure you've had that experience where you
Yeah.
would think, gee, I got to come up with something, and suddenly something pops into your mind. I've had it many times.
Yeah.
And that is the subconscious working on a problem and you giving it think time so there's room for it to appear into the conscious mind.
Right.
Very
And
important.
that collaboration that comes when you have a chance to deeply think about something, then you're able to better share your ideas
Yep.
instead of just spitting out what comes to your mind first. When you're able to think more deeply about it as you relax into the question or the problem and you try to think about what the solution might be, the more you think, the better the answers are. So the first thing that comes to your mind is usually not the best choice. But a lot of times, because we're in such a high stress environment, we tend to go with that first thought because we need to move quickly. But when you slow things down and really begin to think deeply about what's happening, what's, what's a potential solution, and then think again about what else could we do? And what else could we do? And what else could we do? You need dedicated think time for that. That won't
Yeah.
happen when you're trying to make a quick decision and move quickly. You've got about 30 seconds to think about it, and then you're moving to make the next decision. If you're moving at that pace, you won't get the best answers. You won't get the best results.
No, no, you won't. I mean, the reality is that when you look at organizations, they have to make room for this stuff. Now, they have to make room for interruption free time or research time when it relates to innovation. And that's time that gets blocked out that everybody knows is, interruption free time or research time. Everybody knows that 3 to 5 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday you don't interrupt anybody unless it's an absolute emergency, and we know those do happen. But think time is the same. You got to block it out,
Yeah.
and it's really time to sit back and just think. And it's that old saying, right? The person with his feet up on the desk could literally be at that moment the most productive person in the company if he's really thinking about something and solving an issue. And it's not a waste of time. It's very valuable. We proved it in our research. This is a real thing. It matters. I think every company, if they want to be innovative, they've got to start weaving all these human factors of innovation into the fabric of how they work in that company. It's just that important.
It
Well,
is.
so look, we're here every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. We're going to have another episode next week. I didn't look ahead to see what that was, but tune in. I usually do. I can tell you in advance what it is. I didn't look this week to check the schedule, but please join us every Wednesday. We're here 3 o'clock Eastern time, another episode. It'll be episode 11 on innovative culture. I think this has been a fabulous series and you should go check them out. You want to build an innovative culture, you want to lead innovation, watch these, dig into it. This stuff is real.
Yes, absolutely. You want to take the time. A lot of times we feel like we don't have time. to stop and to think, but you really do. You don't have time not to, because things are changing so much. You really do want to make time for that thing because it's so important.
It's so important. So look, we'll see you next Wednesday, 3 o'clock Eastern. You take care.
Yes.